Olivia Garrett stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles hung under her eyes from another late night of failed studying. She splashed cold water on her face and took a deep breath. Just one more day, she whispered to herself. You can make it through one more day. The truth was, Olivia never expected to be at Westfield Academy for interstellar studies. The space station school only accepted the brightest students from across the solar system. Somehow, she had slipped through the cracks in the selection process. 3 months into her first semester, she was failing almost every class. The space station hummed softly around her as she headed back to her small dorm room. The artificial gravity felt slightly off today, or maybe it was just her exhaustion making her dizzy. Her roommate, Zoe Phillips, was already awake, tablet in hand, reviewing notes for their morning classes. "Morning, sleepyhead," Zoe said with a smile. "Ready for Professor Bennett's test today?" Olivia groaned and fell back onto her bed. "Don't remind me. I'm going to fail it just like all the others." "Not if we review the key concepts one more time," Zoe said, moving to sit beside her. Unlike Olivia, Zoe belonged at Westfield. She was brilliant, picking up complex space physics and alien biology as easily as breathing. "It's no use," Olivia said, sitting up and reaching for her own tablet. She pulled up her grade report, which glowed with an alarming number of red marks. "Look at this. Failing xenobiology, failing advanced propulsion theory, failing diplomatic protocols. I don't belong here, Zoe." "That's not true," Zoe insisted. "You just learn differently. I've seen you fix things around the dorm that nobody else could figure out." "Great, so I can fix a broken shower valve. That's not going to help me understand multidimensional space travel equations." The station's announcement system chimed softly, interrupting their conversation. "Attention all students and faculty. A routine fire drill will commence at 0900 hours tomorrow. Please review evacuation protocols and be prepared to proceed to your designated safety zones. This is only a drill." "Perfect," Olivia muttered. "Another procedure I'll probably mess up." "Don't be so hard on yourself," Zoe said, standing up and gathering her things. "Come on, we'll be late for class." They joined the stream of students, moving through the station's wide corridors. The station was massive, housing over 3,000 students and 500 faculty members. It orbited Earth at a distance that made their home planet look like a blue marble through the observation windows. Olivia tried to focus as they walked to class, reviewing basic equations in her head. But the formulas kept slipping away like water through her fingers. Professor Bennett had scheduled a meeting with her tomorrow after the fire drill. She suspected it was to discuss her leaving the academy. The thought made her stomach twist into a painful knot. "Ms. Garrett, you've joined us," Professor Alan Bennett said, as Olivia and Zoe slipped into his classroom. "Just in time." The professor was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes that contradicted his stern reputation. His class, astrophysics and gravitational theory, was one of Olivia's worst subjects. "Today we'll be discussing gravitational anomalies near neutron stars," he said, activating the holographic display at the front of the room. A spinning star appeared, distorting the space around it. Olivia tried to focus. She really did. But 30 minutes into the lecture, the numbers and terms blurred together in her mind. Her notes were a mess of half-finished thoughts and questions she was too embarrassed to ask. When the class ended, Professor Bennett called to her as students filed out. "Ms. Garrett, a moment, please." Olivia approached his desk, her heart sinking. Was he going to kick her out before their scheduled meeting tomorrow? "Your last assignment was—" He paused, looking at his tablet. "Below expectations." "I know, sir. I'm trying. I really am." Professor Bennett studied her face. "I believe you are, but trying isn't always enough. This academy requires both aptitude and dedication." "I understand," she said quietly. "Our meeting tomorrow after the fire drill will be important. I suggest you come prepared to discuss your future at this institution." Olivia nodded, fighting back tears. "Yes, sir." She walked out of the classroom feeling like she was carrying the weight of Earth's gravity on her shoulders. The corridors seemed too bright, too loud, filled with students who belonged here, who understood the complex material, who weren't, counting down the days until they were sent home in disgrace. Back in her dorm room that evening, Olivia stared at her study materials without really seeing them. Zoe was at an advanced placement seminar, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts. "Maybe I should just pack now," she said to the empty room. "Save everyone the trouble of the formal dismissal." She looked out her small window at the stars beyond. She had dreamed of space travel since she was a little girl growing up in a small town in Ohio. Her father had worked in station maintenance on Luna Base, and he told her stories about the vast emptiness of space and the brilliant minds who conquered it. He had been so proud when she got her acceptance letter to Westfield. Now she would have to call him and explain that she had failed. The thought made her chest tighten with anxiety. Her tablet chimed with a message from her study skills advisor. "Don't forget to review evacuation protocols for tomorrow's fire drill. Your assigned safety zone is Pod E17. Olivia pulled up the station schematics, trying to memorize the route to her assigned safety pod. At least she could get this one thing right. The map showed color-coded pathways through the station's sectors. In an emergency, these paths would light up, guiding students and faculty to their designated pods. Pod E17 was in the science wing, not far from the main server room that housed the Academy's vast database of research and educational materials. She traced the path with her finger, committing it to memory. If only her classwork came as easily to her as these practical matters. She could navigate the station blindfolded after just 3 months. She knew which elevators were fastest, which corridors were less crowded between classes, which maintenance workers could be counted on to help with dorm repairs. But ask her to explain the principles of warp field generation, and her mind went completely blank. Zoe returned to the room carrying dinner for both of them from the dining hall. "You look miserable," she said, handing Olivia a container of food. "Was it that bad with Bennett?" "He basically told me to be ready to discuss my exit tomorrow," Olivia said, picking at her meal without enthusiasm. "After the fire drill. He can't kick you out. It's only been 1 semester. He can if I'm failing everything. There's a waiting list a mile long of qualified students who would kill for my spot." Zoe sat down beside her friend. "So what are you going to do?" Olivia shrugged. "What can I do? I've tried everything. Different study methods, tutoring sessions, extra credit. Nothing works. My brain just doesn't process the information like everyone else's." "Well, you've got 1 more night. Want me to help you prepare for tomorrow's meeting? We could put together a case for why they should give you more time." Olivia managed a small smile. "Thanks, but I think I just need to accept reality. I don't belong here, Zoe. I never did." Little did she know that the next day's routine fire drill would prove just how wrong she was about her place at Westfield Academy and in humanity's future among the stars. The alarm blared at exactly 0900 hours. Olivia jumped in her seat even though she had been expecting it. Professor Bennett paused his lecture on gravitational anomalies and sighed. "As you know, this is the fire drill. Please proceed calmly to your assigned safety pods," he said, shutting down the holographic display. "Remember the protocols. This is not just busy work. In space, proper emergency response saves lives." Students gathered their tablets and filed out of the classroom. The corridor lights changed to a steady blue, showing the evacuation routes. Olivia joined the stream of people, keeping her eyes on the blue path that would lead to Pod E17. "Where's your pod?" she asked Zoe, who walked beside her. "Same as yours." "E17, Zoe replied. "Most of our morning class group shares the same assignment." The station corridors felt different during the drill, usually filled with chatting students rushing between classes. Now they moved with purpose. Staff members stood at key junctions directing traffic and checking student IDs against their pod assignments. Remember, in a real emergency, you would have less than 10 minutes to reach your pods, a security officer announced as they passed. The station's emergency protocols would seal off sections to contain damage. Olivia reached Pod E17 with 9 minutes to spare. The pod was a large, reinforced room with emergency supplies lining the walls. Seats were arranged in rows, each with safety harnesses. A communication panel glowed at the front. and a small viewport showed the blackness of space outside, though its shutters were currently closed for the drill. Professor Bennett arrived shortly after she did, clipboard in hand. He checked off names as students entered. "Good timing, Ms. Garrett," he said as he marked her name. "At least your emergency response skills are satisfactory." Olivia wasn't sure if that was a compliment or another reminder of her academic failures. She took a seat next to Zoe and waited for the drill to end. Around 20 students filled the pod, talking quietly among themselves. "How long do these usually last?" Olivia whispered to Zoe. "About 30 minutes. They'll run some system checks, then give the all clear." The first 5 minutes passed normally. Professor Bennett used the time to review emergency protocols with the students. Then the lights flickered once, then again. Then they went out completely. A moment of total darkness was followed by dim red emergency lighting that bathed everyone in an eerie glow. "That's not part of the drill," Professor Bennett said, his voice suddenly tense. He moved quickly to the communication panel and pressed the call button. "Control, this is Pod E17. We're experiencing a power fluctuation. Please advise." No response came from the panel. "Control, do you copy?" He tried again. Still nothing. Whispers spread through the room. Students exchanged worried glances in the red light. "Everyone remain calm," Professor Bennett said. "This is likely just a system glitch." The pod's external viewport shutters suddenly retracted, an automatic response to the power change. What they saw through the window made everyone gasp. An enormous ship hung alongside the station. It was shaped like nothing humans had built, a series of interconnected rings that rotated slowly around a central core. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Is that?" a student whispered. "It's not one of ours," Professor Bennett confirmed, his voice barely audible. The station's emergency broadcast system crackled to life after several tense moments of silence. "This is Station Director Carla Myers. All personnel remain in safety pods. We are experiencing an unauthorized docking attempt by an unidentified vessel. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." "Theo," message cut off abruptly. Static filled the room for a few seconds, then a new voice came through the speakers. It spoke in English, but with a strange rhythm that made the words sound wrong somehow. "Humans of Westfield Academy. We are the Vrax Imperium. Your educational transmission signals have reached our territory. We seek knowledge exchange. Your station is now under provisional claim. Remain where you are. Resistance will be met with disciplinary measures." The pod erupted in panicked whispers. Olivia felt her heart hammering in her chest. First contact with aliens, and it was happening during a routine fire drill. "Quiet, please," and Professor Bennett called, raising his hands. "We need to think clearly." "Are they hostile?" someone asked. "Unknown," Professor Bennett replied. "But they haven't attacked the station, which is a positive sign. They mentioned our transmissions. The Academy broadcasts educational content as part of its public service mission. They said, provisional claim," another student pointed out. "That sounds like they're taking over the station." A loud metallic clang echoed through the station, followed by the unmistakable sound of an airlock engaging. "They're coming aboard," Zoe whispered, gripping Olivia's arm. Everyone fell silent, listening. No further sounds came immediately, but the tension in the room grew with each passing second. Professor Bennett tried the communication panel again. "Control, this is Pod E17. Please advise on current situation." This time, the station director's voice came through, though it sounded strained. "All pods maintain position. The visitors have requested access to our educational databases. We are cooperating while security assesses the situation." Olivia looked around the room. The other students looked terrified. Even Professor Bennett's usual confident expression had been replaced by concern. "They want our knowledge," said a graduate student named Ryan, who specialized in information systems. "The station's database contains decades of human scientific advancement." "But why would they need our science if they can build ships like that?" Zoe asked, pointing to the alien vessel visible through the viewport. Different paths of development, Professor Bennett explained. They may have advanced in some areas, while falling behind in others. Or they may simply want to understand how we think, how we solve problems. The next several hours passed in tense waiting. Occasional announcements from station control instructed everyone to remain in place while diplomatic negotiations continued. No one believed it was going well. Around 6 hours into the confinement, Olivia noticed movement outside the viewport. Several figures moved along the station's exterior hull. They weren't human. "Professor," she called softly, pointing. Everyone crowded around the viewport. The aliens were tall, slender beings with what looked like shimmering exoskeletons. They had multiple upper limbs that moved with precise fluid motions. Each carried devices that glowed as they scanned the station's hull. "They're scanning our systems," Professor Bennett said, "trying to understand the station's layout and functions." "Can they get through the hull?" a frightened student asked. "The station's hull is designed to withstand micrometeorites and radiation, but if they have advanced technology..." Professor Bennett didn't finish the thought. Soon after, they heard sounds in the corridor outside their pod. The aliens had moved inside the station. Through the small window in the pod's door, Olivia caught glimpses of the aliens as they moved past. They checked each junction methodically, scanning the walls and making marks with a tool that emitted a brief flash of light. "They're mapping the station," Olivia said quietly, watching their movements. "They check each section in exactly the same way every time." Professor Bennett looked at her with surprise. "You've been counting their patrol patterns?" "Not really," Olivia shrugged. "I just noticed. They've gone by 4 times now, and they always do the same thing in the same order." Zoe nudged her. "That's what you always do in xenobiology lab too. Notice patterns nobody else sees." "Fat lot of good that does me on exams," Olivia muttered, but Professor Bennett was watching her with growing interest. As the aliens made another pass, he moved closer to the door to observe them. "You're right," he said after they passed. "There's a clear methodology to their search. They're creating some kind of coordinate system." The pod's communication panel lit up again. "All safety pods, this is Director Myers. The visitors have requested access to our main database server. We are attempting to negotiate limited access. Please continue to remain in place." Ryan, the information systems student, shook his head. "If they get full access to the database, they'll have everything. All of Earth's scientific knowledge, defense capabilities, colony locations, everything." A heavy silence fell over the room as everyone realized what that could mean. An advanced alien species with complete access to all of humanity's knowledge, without any treaties or protections in place. "There has to be something we can do," Olivia said, almost to herself. Professor Bennett looked at Olivia with new interest after her comment about the aliens' movement patterns. He walked over and sat in the empty seat beside her. "Ms. Garrett, what else have you noticed about our visitors?" he asked quietly. Olivia hesitated, surprised by his sudden attention. She wasn't used to professors wanting her opinions. "Well," she began slowly, "they're marking the walls with those tools. The marks glow for a few seconds after they make them. Yes, I saw that too. But the marks aren't random," Olivia continued, gaining confidence. "They're placing them in a pattern, like a grid system, but it's not flat. It's 3-dimensional. Professor Bennett nodded. "Go on. It reminds me of those star maps from basic navigation class, the ones that use 3 coordinate points instead of 2. That caught the attention of several other students who moved closer to listen. "She's right," Ryan said, peering out the door's small window at a nearby mark. "They're creating a 3-dimensional mapping system of the station. Once they complete the map, they'll know exactly how to access every part of the station," Professor Bennett concluded, "including the main server rooms. And what they want is in the database," Zoe added. "All of humanity's scientific discoveries, neatly organized and cataloged." A heavy silence fell over the group as they considered what this meant. If these aliens got everything they wanted without any agreements in place, Earth and all human colonies would be at a serious disadvantage. "There has to be something we can do," Olivia repeated more firmly this time. She stood up and walked to the back of the pod where the emergency supplies were stored. Among the oxygen tanks and medical kits was a panel labeled Maintenance Access. "DEIU?" Emergency pods have maintenance tunnels, right? She asked. For repairs during station lockdowns? Professor Bennett joined her, looking at the small access panel. Yes, but they aren't designed for people to move through. They're barely half a meter wide. Olivia studied the panel. I can fit. My dad worked maintenance on Luna Base. He used to let me crawl through service ducts when I was a kid. Even if you could get out, what would be the plan? Professor Bennett asked, but Olivia could tell he was considering the possibility. The aliens don't understand our systems yet. That's why they're mapping everything, Olivia explained, her mind racing ahead. If I can reach the central server hub, I might be able to lock down the classified research database before they crack the encryption. Professor Bennett looked skeptical. That's a huge risk, Olivia. And you're not exactly a computer expert. No, she admitted. But I am small enough to fit through those tunnels. And I'm failing all my classes anyway. Might as well be useful. For once. Zoe stepped forward. I'm coming with you. Olivia shook her head. You won't fit, I barely will. Then I'll walk you through the database security procedures, Ryan offered. I've worked in the server hub as part of my advanced studies. Professor Bennett held up a hand. Wait, we need to think this through. If we do nothing, the aliens will likely get full access to our database. If Olivia tries to reach the server hub, she might be able to secure the most sensitive data, but she'll be putting herself at serious risk. What other options do we have? Olivia asked. Wait here until they take everything they want and leave? The professor sighed deeply. You're right. We need to act. He turned to the other students. This stays between us. If station control is monitoring pod communications, we don't want to tip our hand. He pulled out his personal tablet and activated it. I downloaded the station schematics at the beginning of the term. Not strictly allowed, but I like to be prepared. You broke the rules, Professor? Zoe asked with surprise. He gave a small smile. Academic curiosity has its benefits sometimes. He turned to Olivia. If you go through the maintenance access, you'll need to follow a specific path to reach the server hub. While Professor Bennett mapped the route, Ryan quickly explained the database protection procedures to Olivia. The emergency isolation protocol requires a level 3 access code, he said. I can give you mine. Once you're in the system, you'll need to activate the quarantine sequence. It creates a false front, lets them see basic scientific data while hiding the advanced research behind multiple security layers. Olivia listened carefully, trying to memorize the steps. This was different from her classes. This wasn't theory or equations. This was real, practical problem-solving with clear steps and a defined goal. Ready? Professor Bennett asked, showing her the mapped route on his tablet. Olivia nodded, though her heart was racing. I'm ready. The professor handed her a small, emergency flashlight from the supply kit and a communicator. We'll guide you through the tunnels. If you encounter any problems, tell us immediately. What if the aliens spot her? Zoe asked worriedly. The maintenance tunnels are separate from the main station systems, Professor Bennett explained. Unless they've completely mapped our infrastructure already, they shouldn't know about them. Olivia took a deep breath as Ryan helped her open the maintenance access panel. The opening was tiny, barely wider than her shoulders. A dark tunnel stretched beyond. Good luck, Zoe whispered, squeezing her hand. Olivia slipped into the tunnel head first, pulling herself forward with her elbows. The panel closed behind her, sealing with a soft click. She was alone in the narrow space with only the small flashlight to guide her. Can you hear me? Professor Bennett's voice came through her communicator. Yes, she whispered back. I'm in. Good. Move forward about 10 meters, then you'll reach a junction. Take the left path. Olivia inched forward in the tight space. The metal walls pressed against her shoulders and the air was stuffy and warm. Service tunnels like this ran throughout the station, allowing access to wiring, pipes, and other systems without disrupting regular operations. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 15 minutes, she had navigated several turns and junctions, following Professor Bennett's directions. The tunnel system was like a maze, but the professor's schematics kept her on track. You should be approaching the server section now, he told her. There will be a vertical shaft you need to descend. Olivia found the shaft, a narrow tube with metal rungs built into one side. She carefully turned herself around in the confined space and began climbing down, one rung at a time. How far down? She whispered into the communicator. About 3 meters. Then there's another horizontal tunnel that leads directly to a maintenance panel inside the server hub. As she descended, Olivia could hear faint sounds through the walls, the hum of the server systems and, more worryingly, voices. The aliens were already in the nearby corridors. She reached the bottom of the shaft and continued through the horizontal tunnel, moving as quietly as possible. Finally, she reached the maintenance access panel for the server hub. "I'm at the panel," she whispered. "What now?" "Listen first," Professor Bennett advised. "Make sure the room is empty before you enter." Olivia pressed her ear against the panel. She heard the hum of computers, but no voices or movement. Carefully, she loosened the fasteners and peered through a small gap. The server hub was dark except for the blinking lights of the computers themselves. The aliens must have cut primary power to bypass the security systems. "It looks clear," she reported. "Good," Professor Bennett said. "Remember, once you're inside, find a workstation and enter Ryan's access code. Then activate the database isolation protocol." Olivia gently pushed the panel open and slipped into the room. The central database mainframe stood in the middle, tall column of processing units humming quietly on backup power. Around its base, several workstations provided access points. She moved to the nearest one and turned it on, praying that her movements wouldn't alert the aliens. The screen flickered to life, displaying a warning about operating on emergency power. "I'm in," she whispered into the communicator. "The system is running." As Ryan began guiding her through the security procedures, Olivia heard a sound that made her blood freeze. The distinctive metallic whir of the alien scanning devices was getting closer. They were coming to the server room. Olivia froze at her workstation as she heard the aliens approaching the server room. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, suddenly unsure. "They're coming," she whispered into her communicator. "I can hear them outside the door." "How much of the isolation protocol have you completed?" Professor Bennett asked, his voice tense. Olivia glanced at the screen. "About halfway through. The system shows 48% complete." "You need to finish it before they get in," Ryan urged through the communicator. "Remember the next sequence, Delta 7 Alpha 9 Echo." Olivia quickly typed in the code, trying to keep her hands steady. The progress bar inched forward. 52%, 55%. Outside the door, she could hear the alien scanning devices working. They were checking the security lock, trying to gain entry. A metallic scratching sound suggested they were attempting to override the door controls. "I need more time," Olivia whispered urgently. "Stay calm and keep working," Professor Bennett instructed. "The server room doors are reinforced. It will take them time to break through." Olivia entered the next sequence of commands that Ryan had taught her. The progress jumped to 67%. The encryption process was working, gradually sealing off the most sensitive parts of the database behind multiple security layers. The door to the server room shuddered as something heavy struck it from outside. The aliens were trying to force their way in. "Hurry, Olivia," Zoe's voice came through the communicator now. "You can do this." Another sequence of commands, 78% complete. The door shuddered again, harder this time. A small gap appeared at its edge as the metal began to bend under pressure. "They're breaking through," Olivia reported, her voice barely audible. She typed faster, entering the final security commands. 90%. With a screech of protesting metal, the reinforced door gave way. Two tall, iridescent aliens stepped into the server room, their multiple limbs extending scanning devices and what appeared to be weapons. Their exoskeletons reflected the emergency lights, creating shimmering patterns across their bodies. Olivia ducked behind the central processor column, pressing herself against its cool surface. The screen in front of her showed 98%. 99%. 100%. "It's done," she breathed into the communicator. The aliens moved methodically through the room, their scanning devices sweeping in precise arcs. They hadn't spotted her yet, but in the confined space it was only a matter of time. "Now what?" she whispered. "The emergency protocol created a deception layer," Ryan explained quickly. "They can access what looks like our database, but it only contains basic scientific knowledge, first-year textbook material. The real database is now hidden behind multiple authentication layers that require physical human presence to unlock." That was good news, but it didn't solve her immediate problem. She was trapped in a room with two aliens who would discover her any second. One of the aliens approached her hiding spot, its scanner making an increasingly rapid series of tones as it detected her presence. Olivia pressed herself harder against the processor, mind racing for options. Then she noticed something on her display. The environmental controls for the server room were still accessible. The room had specialized fire suppression systems to protect the delicate equipment, systems that used rapid oxygen depletion rather than water or foam. Without giving herself time to second-guess, Olivia activated the emergency fire protocol. Warning. Lights flashed as the room's ventilation system reversed, rapidly extracting oxygen. Alarms blared, and automated warnings echoed in both English and the international emergency language. The aliens reacted immediately, their movements becoming agitated as they struggled to understand what was happening. Their communication devices emitted rapid clicking sounds as they conferred with each other. Olivia had only seconds before the oxygen levels would affect her too. She grabbed her small emergency breather, standard equipment for all station residents, from her pocket and fitted it over her mouth and nose. The aliens, having no such equipment and apparently requiring oxygen similar to humans, began to struggle. Their movements became uncoordinated as they rushed toward the exit. Once they had stumbled out, Olivia quickly canceled the fire protocol and sealed the damaged door as best she could using the emergency override. It wouldn't hold for long, but it might buy her enough time. "Olivia? What happened?" Professor Bennett's worried voice came through the communicator. "I'm okay," she gasped, still catching her breath. "They're gone for now, but they'll be back with reinforcements." "Listen carefully," he said. "Now that the database is secured, we need to alert station security to your location. There's an emergency beacon on the main console." Following his instructions, Olivia activated the beacon, which would send her exact location to all security personnel on the station. "Now hide," Professor Bennett instructed. "Security will be coming, but so will more aliens." She found a maintenance closet barely large enough to contain her and squeezed inside, pulling the door closed just as the sound of multiple aliens returning echoed through the damaged entrance. For the next 20 minutes, Olivia huddled in darkness, listening to the aliens' increasingly frustrated attempts to access the now secured database. Their scanning devices emitted error tones repeatedly as they tried to bypass the security measures she had activated. Then came new sounds, the distinctive discharge of station security weapons and shouted human commands. The defense forces had arrived. The skirmish was brief but intense. When silence finally fell, Olivia cautiously opened her hiding place to find human security officers securing the room. "Identify yourself," ordered a stern-faced officer, weapon still raised. "Olivia Garrett, first-year student," she replied, slowly raising her hands. "Professor Bennett sent me to secure the database." The officer's expression shifted from suspicion to amazement. "You're the one who locked down the research files? Command said that saved us from losing everything to these visitors." Before she could respond, the station-wide communication system activated. "Attention all personnel. This is Station Director Myers. The alien vessel is retreating. I repeat, the alien vessel is disengaging and moving away from the station. All emergency pods will be unlocked momentarily. Medical teams are standing by." The security team escorted Olivia back through the main corridors rather than the maintenance tunnels. As they walked, she saw the aftermath of the brief invasion: damaged systems, scorched walls from weapons fire, and station personnel already beginning repairs. "What happened?" she asked the officer walking beside her. "Why did they leave?" "When they couldn't access the advanced research data, they became aggressive," he explained. "They demanded we give them full access, When we refused and they saw our security forces deploying, they decided we weren't worth the trouble. Their captain said something about humans being unusually resistant for a developing species. I think you surprised them. When they finally reached emergency pod E-17, Olivia was met with cheers and disbelieving stares from her fellow students. Professor Bennett pushed through the crowd, his normally stern face brightened by an enormous smile. "I knew you could do it," he said, clasping her shoulder. Though the oxygen depletion was quite a creative touch. "I remembered it from the station safety briefing," Olivia admitted. "The one time I wasn't falling asleep during orientation." The professor laughed. "Ms. Garrett, I think we've discovered your problem. You're not a theoretical learner. You're a practical problem solver. You don't memorize well, but you observe, adapt, and apply knowledge under pressure." Olivia blinked, the realization washing over her. All this time struggling with tests and simulations, when what she needed was hands-on application. "So what happens now?" she asked. Professor Bennett's expression grew serious again. "Now we need to prepare. The aliens retreated, but they'll report back to their people. Humanity just announced its presence on the galactic stage in a way we never planned, and we're going to need people like you, people who think differently more than ever." 3 days after the alien encounter, Westfield Academy was slowly returning to normal. Repair crews worked around the clock to fix the damage caused during the brief invasion. Classes had been suspended, but were scheduled to resume the following week. Olivia sat in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Earth was visible from this window, a blue marble hanging in the blackness of space. She thought about how close they had come to disaster. If the aliens had gotten all of humanity's advanced research, who knows what might have happened next? "Mind if I join you?" Olivia turned to see Professor Bennett standing nearby, holding 2 cups of coffee. She nodded, and he sat down beside her, offering one of the cups. "Thanks," she said, accepting it gratefully. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching a supply ship make its approach to the station. "I just came from a meeting with the Academy board," Professor Bennett said finally. "We were discussing your actions during the incident." Olivia tensed. Despite her role in protecting the database, she was still failing most of her classes. Would they still ask her to leave? "I showed them the footage from the server room," he continued. "The security cameras captured everything you did." "There were cameras in there?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I didn't think about that." "Emergency backup systems," he explained. "They switched to battery power during security lockdowns. Your oxygen depletion trick was particularly impressive." Olivia shrugged. It just seemed like the obvious solution at the time. "That's exactly the point," Professor Bennett said, turning to face her. "When most students are presented with a problem, they try to recall what they've memorized. When you face a problem, you look at what's available and create a solution on the spot. It's a completely different way of thinking." He pulled out his tablet and showed her a document. "This is a transfer approval. The board has agreed to move you from the standard academic track to the advanced practical applications track." Olivia stared at the document in disbelief. "But that program is only for top students. I'm failing everything." "You're failing at theoretical work," Professor Bennett corrected her. "But you excel at practical problem solving. The APA track is designed for students like you, people who learn by doing, not by memorizing." He swiped to another document. "You've also been offered a part-time position with the station's emergency response team. They were very impressed by your knowledge of the maintenance tunnel system." Olivia couldn't believe what she was hearing. 3 days ago, she had been preparing to leave the academy in disgrace. Now they wanted her to stay in a special program? "What about my current classes?" she asked. "You'll drop most of them. The APA track has different requirements, more hands-on training, fewer theoretical exams. You'll still take core subjects, but they'll be taught differently." He smiled. "And you'll be getting credit for your actions during the alien encounter. The board considers it an exceptional demonstration of practical skills under pressure." Olivia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time since arriving at Westfield, she felt like she might actually belong here. "There's one more thing," Professor Bennett added. "The aliens left behind some technology when they retreated. Nothing major, just a few scanning devices and communication tools. We need people to help study them, figure out how they work. Your observational skills would be valuable to the research team. You want me to help study alien technology? Olivia asked, amazed. But I don't know anything about xenotechnology. Neither. Does anyone else? The professor pointed out. That's the thing about first contact, we're all beginners. And sometimes a fresh perspective is exactly what's needed. As they talked, Olivia saw Zoe entering the observation deck, accompanied by Ryan and several other students from Pod E17. They spotted her and came over. Have you heard? Zoe asked excitedly. They're creating a new research group to study the alien ship scanning patterns, and they want our input since we observed them directly. Professor Bennett was just telling me, Olivia said, smiling, at her friend. We told them you were the first to notice the patterns, Ryan added. They want to interview you specifically about what you saw. Olivia felt a blush rising to her cheeks. She wasn't used to being considered an expert on anything. The station's announcement system chimed softly, interrupting their conversation. Attention all personnel. The United Earth Space Agency vessel, UES Horizon, has docked at Bay 4. Scientific and diplomatic personnel will be boarding shortly to debrief all witnesses to the recent first contact event. They got here quickly, Professor Bennett commented. Earth is taking this very seriously. Should they be worried? Olivia asked. The aliens left. This time, the professor said. But they know we're here now. And they know we have technology. And knowledge they might want. This isn't over, it's just beginning. Before she could respond, Olivia's tablet chimed with a new message. It was her updated schedule for the coming week. Instead of her usual classes, it showed new assignments. Practical engineering, applied problem solving, and most surprisingly, introduction to alien technology analysis. This is really happening, she said quietly. You earned it, Professor, Bennett replied. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show people their true capabilities. The next day, Olivia found herself in a conference room with high-ranking officials from Earth. She described what she had observed about the aliens, their movement patterns, their communication methods, the way they scanned and marked the station. And, you noticed all this while hiding in an emergency pod? One of the officials asked, sounding impressed. I've always been good at noticing patterns, Olivia explained. Just not good at explaining why they matter on written tests. The official smiled. Sometimes the people who struggle with traditional education are the ones who shine when real problems arise. A week later, classes resumed. Olivia walked into her first practical application session feeling nervous but excited. Instead of rows of desks facing a professor, the room had workstations arranged in circles. Each station had tools, equipment, and various mechanical and electronic components. The instructor, a woman with graying hair and hands that showed years of practical work, greeted the class. Welcome to Applied Problem Solving, she said. In this class, we don't memorize theories. We solve real problems with whatever tools and knowledge we have available. Our first project is inspired by recent events. We'll be designing improved emergency response systems based on what we learned during the alien encounter. Olivia took her place at a workstation, picking up some of the components and examining them. For the first time in her academic life, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. As she began sketching ideas for improved emergency communication systems, she thought about how strange life was. A few days ago, she had been failing every subject and preparing to leave the academy in disgrace. Now she was helping prepare humanity for future encounters with alien civilizations. Sometimes a fire drill really could change everything.